So hello, I'm Lisa Wilkinson from the Elbow Room, and I'm here today with Kevin Callan from the Elbow Room Clinic. Hi Kevin.
Hi Lisa.
So Kevin is our naturopath here and our acupuncturist, and we're here today to talk about my insatiable habit for chocolate and sugar. So Kevin, I just cannot stop eating chocolate and sugar, and like if I open a bar of chocolate, sometimes I start with one square and then I just mill through the whole thing and then it's just gone.
Yeah, that, Lisa, is a common thing that I hear in the clinic, and I need to work with people's relationship with sugar in nearly every consultation. And when I speak about sugar, what I'm really talking about is a food that has the potential to release its glucose quickly. So I don't just include chocolate or sweets in that. What you often find is people come in and they say, you know, I try to avoid bread, I feel bloated and uncomfortable after it, but once I start I can't stop, and you know, I say it's just going to be this day that I'm going to have bread, and the next thing a week or 2 weeks has gone by and it's now upset my digestive system. So there is an addictive quality to foods that release their glucose quickly, and not just obviously sweet foods.
And that's why you just have to keep going.
Exactly, you have this Moorish kind of relationship with it.
Okay.
So there are a couple of reasons why foods with a high glucose potential, or what I'll just call sugar-rich foods, have this Moorish kind of effect on us. One of the major reasons, of course, is that it has an effect on your blood sugar. Your blood sugar is the level of glucose that's in your blood at any given time, and of course blood glucose levels is what pays for all your physiological functions. It's like your fuel. And when you have a food that releases its glucose quite quickly, it will spike your blood sugar up high. And this, of course, is great. It gives you that instant relief. It gives you that feeling where I like to call it the hard edges are taken off life. It gives you some comfort.
You just get instant energy all of a sudden, and you just go.
Exactly. But what happens, of course, is that when your blood sugar rises too quickly and to too high a point, it has a potentially damaging effect on your nervous system and other physiological processes. So what your body will do is, in an emergency, it will make excesses of insulin to get the blood sugar low. And so what happens is you don't go to a nice healthy level of blood glucose, you go hypoglycemic or low blood sugar.
Okay.
Which then, of course, makes you crave more sugar. You have those symptoms of possibly feeling lightheaded, short-tempered, poor concentration, which I know you've spoken to me about before.
Yeah, and then also the kind of crashing fatigue as well, where I just feel like I instantly need to go and sleep.
Exactly, can't think, can't remember, those sorts of things. Often people talk to me about a kind of a generalised sense of impending doom, you know, like generalised anxiety about something that they can't quite put their finger on.
Yes,
So in order to get away from that, you go for more glucose. And so where you had decided that on pain of death you will not have the sandwich, you're going to go for the wrap, all of a sudden you find yourself eating the panini and you don't know how it happened. Instinctively you have a physiological need, because your blood sugar is low, for more glucose.
And what about sugar-free foods?
Yeah, sugar-free foods
are like substitutes.
Yeah, are not the answer, in that, you know, when you see like pre-prepared foods like diet this and sugar-free that, it often has aspartame, and there are quite a few question marks being raised over the health implications of long-term use of aspartame and canderel and those sugar alternatives. But what I do work a lot with is encouraging people in a few key areas of how to balance their blood sugar and still satisfy that sweet impulse, but with foods that have natural sugars and other nutrients with them. I often talk about, when you put something in your mouth, you must think of it as an opportunity to nourish yourself. And if you have something like white bread or even brown sliced pan, which is mostly white flour, very little nutrients in it, you're ingesting something there that costs a lot for you to metabolize and doesn't give you very much. So where your sweet foods are concerned, you're looking at more fruits, dried fruits in moderation. Some of the tips I give people, and that I find quite useful myself, are things like oat cakes with almond butter and a little bit of sugar-free jam on them. The almond butter slows the release of the sugar or the glucose, should I say, from the sugar-free jam, from the fruit and from the oat cake. So there are a few tips like that. An ingredient that I find really useful for anybody's larder cupboard are two different types of alternative sugars. One would be xylitol, which releases significantly less glucose when you ingest it, but it's quite versatile. It's granulated, so it's like sugar.
And it's natural.
And it's natural indeed, yeah, absolutely. And so you can take it and not spike your blood sugar just so much. Another one that's gaining popularity is coconut sugar, which is made from coconuts, and it also doesn't spike your blood sugar just so much.
Okay.
So if things like, there are things on the market that you can get like Lizzie's wheat-free granola. I don't know whether you've ever come across it. It's wheat-free and low glycemic load. It doesn't in and of itself spike your blood sugar very high.
Okay.
And you could maybe have that as a snack with some xylitol on it and maybe some soya yogurt, which is naturally low calorie, and little tips and tricks like that I use.
So would you recommend that I just kind of completely change my diet, or would I just kind of...
No, I mean, I'm all for and very much admire people who can radically change and overhaul their diet from the get-go. But kind of how I like to work is that we identify what your constraints are, you know, what the kids like to eat, what your timetable is like, what your budget is like, and work out a way of incrementally and gradually adjusting your eating habits so that you can kind of gain some ground gradually without absolutely doing your head in, you know.
Yeah.
So some quick tips, for example, for the purposes of this chat, would be to start the morning with a low GL breakfast. So low GL is low glycemic load, in that it's a food that releases its glucose more slowly.
Okay.
So it doesn't spike your blood sugar like I spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
Things like porridge with some nuts in it to slow the release of the glucose from the porridge. Maybe a scrambled egg and 2 or 3 oat cakes that aren't very dense in their carbohydrate, that sort of idea.
Yeah.
And then the other tip is to never go too long without eating. Either 2 to 3 hours you want to be having another snack that is again low GL.
Okay. Not missing breakfast.
Not missing breakfast.
No.
That's a very good point, and just before we finish up, it's really important to take account of that. If you go too long without eating, or indeed you skip a meal, for example breakfast, you wake up and all through the night you've used whatever glucose was in your bloodstream for growth and repair and catching up on the work of the day overnight. And so when you wake up, your blood glucose level is naturally quite low, which accounts for them can't think, can't function, you know, have to peel yourself off the bed kind of feeling. And if you, because you're busy and you have to get the kids out and you have to get to work and you prioritise everything else bar nourishing yourself, you get yourself out and you find yourself in the car, what will happen is, out of necessity, your body will begin to manufacture cortisol, your adrenal glands.
Yes, yeah.
And cortisol has a number of functions, but the 2 main ones that are interesting here are, one, it releases glucose from stores in your liver. So your body will make cortisol to get some glucose into your bloodstream out of nowhere, if you like, out of no food. And it will give you the little lift and raise your blood sugar so that you have the concentration not to run into the back of somebody when you're driving to work. The difficulty with that is because it doesn't have any nutrient content associated with it, it hasn't involved you taking in other nutrients, it's hugely costly because you have to spend nutrients to make cortisol and all of that. So it's an expensive way for you to make glucose and energy, and it's only ever designed for historically speaking, when you were being chased by a predator and you hadn't eaten. That's what that's for.
Yeah.
Associated with that cortisol production, of course, is you also get the increased stress response of stimulated nervous system, blood pressure increase, heightened anxiety. So skipping meals has a direct effect on your stress levels, actually. And if you think of the emotional aspect of our relationship with food and with sugar, if you're more stressed, you're going to be more likely to want to go for something that gives you some comfort. And so the vicious cycle happens of you spiking blood sugar, getting the drop, and then and away we go again.
Okay.
So it can be useful to kind of have those ideas in the back of your head so that you can be patient with yourself, practice a few things. You're going to be your whole life getting this right. It's not about getting it 100% right.
Yeah.
But a couple of those things can make it a lot easier.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
So goodbye from us, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.